Well, there's a long list of suggestions that a non-white person can make to a white person about what a white person can do that's in the code book. But since I'm not looking at it directly right now, two of the things that are right at the top of that list. First of all, never, ever say anything to a non-white person that is not true. Because a lot of white people are always asking, they're making statements rather, they're saying, black people are always marching and complaining and whining about this and whining, and they never give you any details about doing anything. They just say that we don't like the way things are. And they break windows and turn cars over and foam at the mouth and shout slogans and whatnot, but they never go into any details about what it is that they want us to do. They call us all these names: racists, white supremacists, bigots, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But they're not businesslike. They just believe in running up and down the street, throwing things and yelling and insults and calling us names. And we white people who want to help don't know what to do because they're too busy calling us names and not going into any details, not acting like they're going to sit down and do business in a sane, methodical manner to solve their problems. They just say, we don't like it the way it is, and we are racist, and blah, 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 blah. So the code approaches this, the counter-racist code, the suggestions that I make, because many times they're telling the truth about that. Back in the 1960s, some white people were asking that same question, just in that way. What do you want us to do? Name something. And they just say, well, they say, well, what do you want? See, they use that word want. And I remember in one instance, the answer was from a group of black people was, well, what do we want? What do you got? Okay, and everybody laughed. See, but it's no laughing matter. I mean, when it comes right down to when the rubber meets the road. So the first order of business, I thought about that. That's why I started putting it in the book. Oh, when they ask you a specific question, what do you want? And you want to get into specifics, say, well, now, first thing we want is don't ever say anything to a non-white person that's not true. Now, a lot of people will say, well, we want housing, we want better jobs, we want et cetera, et cetera. We can get to that later. That's on the list, too. But top of the list is don't say anything to a non-white person that's not true. Why? Why is that in the textbook for victims of white supremacy, right at the top of the list of what you say to white people when they ask, what do you people want? Why is that at the top of the list? Because white supremacy thrives on falsehood. This is the first thing they do when they get ready to mess over people, is start saying things that are not true and get people to believe it in all areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. The white supremacists make sure that they have a whole arsenal, a whole warehouse of things that they say that are not true. Because when you fool people, you got them. When you got people completely dizzy, walking around, with a head full of non-truths. Everything you have said to them, or most of the things you have said, have turned out not to be true at all. That person is just groggy right from the lies that they're getting, all right, the non-truths. So the first order of business, don't say anything. If you want to really help, don't say anything ever to a non-white person. If you're a white person, don't say anything ever to a non-white person that is not true. Make sure that what you are saying is absolute truth. Don't say anything ever that's not true. And number two, because I named two things. That's the first one. Number two, right at the top of the list. And these two things will go a long ways. Don't say anything that's not true. And number two is don't withhold constructive information. The minute, on a job or anywhere else, the minute you get that constructive information, pass it on to a needy, a non-white person who is in need. That information, and they don't have that information, is constructive information. Don't withhold constructive information. Don't keep it to yourself or pass it on to other white people and skip over the non-white people. Don't do that. In fact, make it a priority to give it to the person who needs it most. And in many cases, I'll say, probably in most cases, it'll be a non-white person that needs that constructive information. Constructive information goes a long ways. Information is power. Constructive information is power all over the world. All right? So don't withhold constructive information. The white supremacists are skillful at doing that. They'll give you a whole bunch of information, but it'll be non-constructive. They'll rush to give a non-white person a whole bunch of ideas, a whole bunch of information to send them down a path that's headed for destruction. So we want constructive information, all of that constructive information, any constructive information that you have, anything that you think will wind up really helping this non-white person, give it to them immediately. Make a beeline to them deliberately and do it. Those two things will go a long ways.